everyone, and thanks for being here. My name is Mandy, and I'm one of the librarians at CSU, and I'm also the kind of OER, open education person for the library and to some extent the campus. And I'm very excited that you're all here to hear our speaker. But before we start, I wanted to give you an example of an open textbook in action. And so Sean Ryan from Math is here to just kind of talk a little bit about what he did when he got one of our textbook affordability grants, just to give you a flavor of what's possible. And in the meantime, let me know if you did not get handouts, and help yourself to food throughout. Thanks.
So it's nice to meet all of you. Like every great politician, I start with an apology. I have to teach at 1:30, so after I'm giving the introduction, I have to miss your talk, I'm sorry. But I'm already using open text in action, so you've infected me indirectly. So we did linear algebra this semester. The state of Ohio actually had a huge grant, Ohio State, I think it was Ohio Dominican and one other university, to develop basically the freshman and sophomore undergraduate math curriculum in these online modules. So each subject of linear algebra has a little online module, and it's paired with an open access textbook. So I adopted the textbook this semester, and just, because we want to get some data, I went through the whole IRB process to get approved to collect survey data on the students, their opinions of using open access textbooks and these modules, a pre and post survey. Basically what I did with the homework is I took the module as an online, we have a web work, which is like online homework. But you can then, I took those problems, put them on paper, and they still have to hand in a physical copy, but they could check the computational work online. So they have the open access textbook, they downloaded it the first day of class. No one's asked me once where to get a textbook or how much it costs or whatever, and they all seem to appreciate it. And by pairing it with some sort of module thing online, now everything's fully free, fully integrated. They can do it on their phones. I can't tell you how many times in class someone pulls up something on their textbook on their phone and shares it. And basically, so far, it's the third week of the semester, and everyone turned the homework on time the first day. That was the first time that ever happened to me in my life. It's remarkable. No one's, aunt died last week or anything. But they really enjoy having it. I just put the link on Blackboard because it's open. They can download it. And basically, my experience with it is the IRB process was the longest part, checking all the boxes. I used Teresa in the library. She administered my surveys because I didn't want to do any bias, me being in the room. So she was able to work with me, and Mandy has been working with me we sort of designed the survey together. We did this open textbook grant in the fall. Now Teresa administered the survey, and she's keeping them locked in her office, so I'm not tempted to be biased at all. She claims she'll open it December, 20th, after the grades are finalized, and I can see the results. Until then, I'm just teaching out of this textbook. But at least for math, and I can say for most sciences, having the textbook side by side with the homework and not having to carry a physical book is also a huge benefit. So far, everything's been good. Does anyone have any questions about my specific use before we get to the speaker? Or
your
yes.
homeworks? You said the homeworks were online?
Yeah.
Were those on OpenStack's site?
So it's the equivalent, there's this Mooculus that was designed for calculus. It's written with this LaTeX, because mathematicians use LaTeX. So they designed a shell that converts LaTeX into HTML. So I can write and edit all the homeworks. Okay. I just compile them and it uploads to a website, and they can go to the website link and, as they fill it out, it tells them if they're right or wrong. And it gives a hint, oh, your minus sign might be off or something, instead of just wrong. So the state of Ohio had a couple extra things that I didn't need for our curriculum, so I just deleted those and I just made my own course. But it's all the math courses, and I believe political science and some of the English courses are all in the OER database on the state of Ohio website. So I think it's a parallel program to this, right? It's not the same program.
It's not the same. Nicole will talk more about what makes OpenStax different.
Yeah.
OpenStax is kind of an example of how to do open education. This is another example.
Yeah. So there are many options. If what I'm talking about doesn't fit your needs, this may fit your needs better. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay. And if you need to email me on anything, Ryan at CSU Ohio. So I have to go teach math modeling. Sorry, but
that's okay.
if you need anything, let me know.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to introduce our main speaker now. Nicole Finkbeiner is the Director of Institutional Relations for Rice University's free open textbook initiative, OpenStax, where she founded and runs the nationally recognized Institutional Partner Program. She's a national keynote speaker on open education, equity, and access. She coaches colleges and universities to effectively encourage faculty adoptions of open educational resources, or OER, to promote student success and academic freedom. She's a graduate of the Kellogg Community College, Western Michigan University, and Michigan State University, and she worked in college relations for community colleges prior to joining OpenStax. So without any further ado, I will let her take it away.
Thank you so much for having me today. Since we're talking about something that's disruptive, I feel it's fair to tell you all that you can interrupt me whenever you want if something's not clear. I may tell you, wait until the end because I've got that already, or we may stop at that point, but feel free to do that. So again, I'm Nicole Finkbeiner. I work at Rice University, which is in Houston, Texas, and this is the OpenStax OER project. And it's probably easiest to think of Rice University's OER project in sort of three pillars. The first one is the actual textbooks that we publish. We have 38 high-quality, peer-reviewed, open-access textbooks that we have available. We also run, which is my main responsibility, a coaching program that is free to institutions where we work with colleges and universities across the country on their OER initiatives, whether it be OpenStax, any of the other OER. That one's not just OpenStax. And then the third piece of all of this is, as a research university, we are interested in learning science and learning research. We report to a faculty member. And so our long-term goal with all of this is to partner with colleges and universities to look at the science of learning and really look at how students learn and what we can learn from that. So we're doing simple studies from, well, not so simple, but simpler studies such as, does highlighting in a textbook increase student learning? Probably not. I already saw some heads or all the way up to, can we create a tutoring model similar to how Netflix and Pandora learn your preferences that would help students and tutor them naturally through the content so that they get a higher grade? So those are the types of projects. So those are the three. For this particular presentation, I'm going to focus primarily on the books, but I'm happy to answer questions about the other two as well. So I always think it's fun to start with, who am I? This is me when I was the marketing director at Kellogg Community College. But my story with this all starts much earlier than this. My mother worked part-time at a community college while I was growing up, and she did so in the evenings. So what better place for a young student to go and do their homework than to go to the library with my mother at night? And so I would. And this was back when we had those very traditional 15-minute breaks, if you remember those. And often, my mom would head down to the bookstore on her breaks with two students in tow. And she was constantly going through the bookstore line, buying books. And sometimes the students were handing her cash, sometimes they weren't. And I didn't really understand what was going on. But now I understand all too well what was going on. Is my mother was using her 20% off staff discount at the bookstore to buy these students books for them to help with affordability. And in the cases where they were not handing her any money, it's because she was using her own charity money to keep these kids in school. And I will say that I have seen this repeated over and over and over again by other staff at community colleges and universities throughout my career. And that's what really motivated me to want to work on this project. I always like to start with a definition of OER because I find that it can be a little confusing. And I underline the part that I'm most interested in is that it is something that resides in the public domain or has been released under an open license that permits primarily three things: no cost access, adaptation, and redistribution. Those are the three things that really underline an open educational resource. So a lot of people think anything that's free is OER, and anything that's OER is free, and that's not necessarily the case. If it's free, but it still has traditional copyright restrictions on it, meaning that you don't have the right to redistribute, you don't have the right to modify the content, then that does not count as an OER. So examples of this, I absolutely recommend you use library resources. I'm not saying don't, but if they are still bound by traditional copyright, they do not count as an open educational resource. The one that throws everybody is TED Talks, because they actually have a Creative Commons license on them, but it's a non-derivative, meaning you don't have the right to modify them, which news to me, you probably shouldn't just show a clip of one. You're really supposed to show the whole thing or none. We all do that. But anyway, and then anything else that has copyright, traditional copyright restrictions. Most of us accomplish this through open licenses, through the Creative Commons. And so Rice University, when we're publishing stuff, we tend to use CC BY and CC BY and CSA. Oops. Wow, that's fun. I think it must have clicked at the same time. Okay, so CC BY is the one we use primarily. And what this is saying is, Rice University publishes these books. We hold the copyright to them still. We're not giving up our copyright, but we are giving you automatic permission to do whatever you want with the content as long as you provide attribution back to us. So you can modify it, you can revise it, you can remix it, you can hand it out to students at will. We don't really care as long as you provide attribution back to us. And I have a lot of really great examples of this. The NCSA means non-commercial, which means you can't sell the content. With CC BY, you actually can. Maybe it's on a weird timer. Is it touchscreen? That's even better. Okay, so with NC, that means non-commercial. So technically, with the CC BY stuff, you could sell it. Good luck, because we offer it for free. But you could try. With that one, you cannot sell, and it's share alike. Okay, so who are we? I do like to make this really clear. Number one, we are a university. We all that work on this project are Rice employees, have the rice.edu email address. So you are working with a fellow university. So that you can think of this as, this is a cool project we started that you can also use if you want. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. So any money that we are able to obtain through this, and I'll explain that all later, goes to the sustainability of our organization and revising and updating the content of the books. We were founded by Rice faculty members, still very involved, and then we're most known for publishing 38 open access textbooks. Well, now it just doesn't like me. All right. I'm going to keep using my clicker and not touch it. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We are really trying to improve access for everybody and really improve student learning. As I mentioned earlier, and let me say this more clearly, our goal is not to replace a publisher textbook with a free textbook. That is phase one. Our goal is to be able to utilize these resources and other OER resources to greatly improve student learning. That is our long-term goal of all of this. So we do this through increasing access to the content, and the faculty member talked about that, providing students with financial relief, but a big one for us is increasing the faculty academic freedom, the ability to utilize the resources however you see fit, not how the publisher sees fit, and then do a lot of research around student learning and teaching in a way that's empirically sound. I usually get the question of how we're funded, so I like to cover this. For brand new titles, whenever we're publishing a book, we do require grant funding for that. And the reason is we spend somewhere between $500,000 and $2 million per textbook that we publish. Where does that money go? We pay all the faculty authors who write for us. We pay all of our peer reviewers. We typically have to design all the open access art from scratch. We have a whole editorial team that looks over it, all kinds of fun people involved. So you can see there are a large variety of different foundations, including, for example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Google that fund this work for us. We do a lot of teaching and learning academic research, obviously around student learning, and then we also run a specialized program that I run, which is that coaching program on how to encourage OER use. With that said, the big question I get is, what if all your grant funding goes away tomorrow? So the good news is we're what's called a sustainable nonprofit, which means that we make enough money to cover our costs. So if all of our grant funding went away tomorrow, the only thing that would change is that you would not see us publish new textbooks, but we would still be able to revise and even do full editions of the textbooks we already have. So how do we do that? Someone asked about technology partners earlier. We partner with a wide variety of technology partners to offer homework around the books and courseware around the books. And if you choose to use one of them, they give a portion of that back to us. About 10% of students opt to purchase a print copy of our books. And if they do, we make a couple dollars there. And then we cut a lot of expenses. You will never see a sales rep from us. We don't have them. And that is a huge expense the publishers have. If you see us at a conference, I encourage you to go up and ask that person what they do for us, because it's very likely that you're talking to our accountant or someone like that, because we all have to take turns doing that. Unfortunately, we don't hand out the traditional complimentary copies. And the reason for that is every time a publisher walks into your office and they hand you a free copy of a book, it's not really free. It costs them somewhere between $50, and if you sell it and you use Textbook Market somehow, $200. And so they make up that cost by charging the students more, and we didn't want to do that. And then unfortunately, no fancy parties or free food. I'm usually scrounging with you all to find free food, so thank you for CSU providing the food today. All right, so we started this journey in 1999, so we're actually coming up on our 20-year celebration. And we started as a simple open educational resource repository. So what this was is we created an online space for faculty to upload and share any content they wanted with one another. So a lot of faculty said, I've created my own content, I want to open license it and share it with the rest of the world. And so we created this for them. And this continues to exist. It's called CNX. It has 46,000 pieces of content at last count in it. But guess what? No one was using it. So the faculty member that would upload the content would use it, and maybe one or two other faculty from across the country. But our goal was to create something where faculty from across the country would en masse start using these resources instead of traditional copyrighted resources, and that wasn't happening. So we had to go back to the drawing board and ask you all, okay, what do you need? Like, what do you need that we're not providing? And the thing that we kept hearing over and over and over again was, we want to make sure, we want to be assured of the quality of the resource. And so as academics, the next question, of course, is define quality for us. And this is the definition you all gave us. Must meet standard scope and sequence, must be expert written, has to be peer reviewed, needs to go through a rigorous editorial process, and has to have regular errata and industry updates to the content. And so when we retooled in 2011 as OpenStax, we said anything that has this mark on it is going to meet this quality standard. That's why it costs $500,000 to $2 million per textbook, because we are meeting this very high quality standard. So you can almost think of this arm of our work as like a nonprofit publisher of textbooks, if that's helpful. So these are the books that we have available right now, and whenever I throw this up, the next question I always get two questions. Number one is what's coming next. We're working through the business books. We're still in the process of publishing Entrepreneurship and Essentials of Business Law. Then we're working on additive manufacturing, which is 3D printing, I've been told, and a college success book. And then we're doing a second edition of our psychology book. So the next question people ask me always is, how are you choosing the textbooks that you're choosing to publish? And a lot of criteria go into that, but there are two main criteria. Number one, how many students are taking the course nationwide? So for example, there are 1 million students a year taking US history in the United States. There are 1 million students a year taking psychology, so high enrollment courses. Number two, how expensive are the textbooks currently in the market? So, for example, we were at your Provost Council meeting this morning, and the highest cost textbook from them that they found at your university was $420. You need to figure out which book that is, but it was $420. So, I'm not too concerned about a $40 book, but I'm very concerned about a $420 book. So, it's not uncommon for me to see that with microbiology. It's not uncommon to see a statistics book around $280. I found it ironic, but economics is one of the most expensive textbooks that you can buy in the market. The next thing we learned, and this is the Nicole made a mistake moment, is when I started at Rice 6 years ago, I used to ask students and faculty, what format of the book are you using? And I realized very quickly that that was the wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is what formats of the book? Because students and faculty would look at me and go, no, one of the things we like best about this is that you can use any of these formats, and most of them don't cost additional dollars. So I'm going to, oops, I had Firefox open. By the way, if you did not see your book on that list, Mandy and I can help you find one. We have other sites that we can refer you to, so we're happy to do that. Okay, so the first thing that I want to emphasize here is that I'm not logged into this website. So students do not need to create a login to gain access to their content. That is one of the big benefits of an open educational resource, is there are no barriers to accessing the content. So no student should ever have an excuse for that. So I'll go to subjects, and I'll go to all. I like showing our college physics book just because it was our very first book we published years ago. So the first version of the book is the online version. The online version is completely free. It is a responsive design, which means it reads very well whether you pick up your cell phone or on a laptop or on a Kindle. Why is that important? I'm sure you all have had the experience of trying to read a PDF on your cell phone. It's awful. So this is really helpful from that. Students tend to use this version when they have some sort of handheld device because of its responsive design. I see a lot of studying from this version on trains and buses and things like that. Faculty tend to really like this version of the book because they can link to certain sections of the text in their LMS and assign readings that way, or in their syllabus. I was actually at a calculus class at UTRGV, Rio Grande Valley, the other day, and the faculty member had up his syllabus and was just clicking on points of it. So that's how they tend to use that. The second version of the book is the PDF, and it doesn't like me trying to download a PDF on this one. Anyway, you can download the PDF. It's an immediate download when there isn't a firewall. And it is also completely free. So yeah, oh, it's there. Oh, kill 2 of those because otherwise that's a massive file. Thank you. So the PDF is also completely free. I recommend going ahead, no matter what OER you use, if there is a PDF, have the students download it. And I say that because if they lose internet access or anything like that, they will always have access to their text. The other nice thing about the PDF is they can save it for the rest of their lives. I joke as long as they remember where they saved it. But it can be really helpful for studying for things like the MCAT or the GRE or things like that. Now, students could print this version if they so choose to do so. However, and that question came up in your Provost Council meeting, this is a 1,400-page book. If you printed this sucker, I don't care if you're using a laser printer at home, it's going to cost you a good fortune. We do have print copies available at a very low cost that students can buy if they really want that, but I always like to point out that you do have the right to print it if you so choose to do so. You'll notice also, because this is a question that comes up, these are hyperlinks, so students can jump around in the content instead of scrolling through it. Although I will tell you that students over and over and over again tell me their favorite feature is they can just hit Control F and find whatever they want. We also have a brand new app that's available for both Google Play and iPhone. It's brand new. We just got it a couple weeks ago. It's also completely free. We were able to partner with a company out of Florida called Study Edge, and they've included even some free videos, tutoring videos for the first couple chapters of the book that are free that are in there as well. And then if a student finds those valuable, I think it's a very small fee for them to get access to the rest of it. But the app itself to read the book, completely free. As I mentioned, about 10% and order a print copy. Now here's the tricky part, and I want to emphasize this. If you ask your students, about 60% will tell you they plan to purchase a print copy. 10% will actually click buy. So just be aware of that, especially with your bookstore. We want to find a way to offer these, but as low as cost possible. These are hardcover, full-color textbooks. They look just like a traditional textbook, I promise you. But we're a nonprofit. It is not our job to make money off of these other than just to cover our costs. So the thinnest one costs $25. The thickest one I have is astronomy. I refuse to carry it around, and it's $65. And the students can buy it through your bookstore. Your bookstore was on the task force this morning, talked about that through Full Ed. Their markup should also be at this range. Or they can buy it specifically from Amazon, and you can see we're very clear with the students of how much they should pay for that.
Are those bound or receipt?
They're hardcover bound.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yep. So actually,
I wish we have a couple examples, so
Yeah.
I might run and get them.
yeah.
We actually had more, but the students, they've gone missing already, so. But yeah, you can see they look just like a regular textbook.
Yeah, they're exactly the same. Yeah. The online version is the most accessible version. That's our accessibility version. It meets the level AA, section 508, all that fun stuff. But for some of our books, one of the foundations actually donated specific files for sight and visually impaired things. So those are the Bookshare files. And then we also were able to partner with Amazon and offer a completely free Kindle version. So students can highlight, take notes in that as well. All right, so you can see the senior contributing authors and the contributing authors. We have an average of 50 peer reviewers per book. If you want to see that, that's on the preface.
I just have a quick question. You said the Bookshare has other
Files.
other files,
Yeah.
like where they can listen to the book?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that on all of the books or just a couple?
So the online version works with those software. So
Okay.
that they can listen to the book and such, but if they have a very specific software, they can also use the Bookshare version. So they
okay.
should just need the online version, but we've got them there as backups, just
That would
in
be
case.
so cool. They can do it on the app.
Yeah, that's a good point. I need to check on that.
That'd be neat.
Whether we can do that, yeah. Errata. So we recognize that books aren't perfect and that sometimes they need updating and different things. So there is a way for you to submit errata. Now I want to be very clear about this. This is not like Wikipedia. All errata go back through a peer review process. And if approved, and let me tell you, I just saw a major university one rejected because it wasn't agreed upon. If approved, then we tend to update the books between semesters. Why? A lot of people ask me that because they're like, you could just update the online versions right away. Yeah, but faculty, shockingly, don't like when we're messing with the books in the middle of the semester. Shock. So we do it between semesters. That also lets us know when to do a full revision of the books because we only do full revisions when it's pedagogically necessary to do so. That was a big request of our advisory board is don't just come out with new editions every couple of years for the sake of doing it. Only do it when it's necessary. So let us know what you would like changed. You can see the published date, and this is something I really like to emphasize. There's two different ISBNs. There's a print and a digital. I recommend submitting both to your bookstore and encourage them to list both. The reason is the digital versions are completely free. And so if the bookstore only lists the print, it's possible the students may think they have to buy that. We want them to know they don't have to if they don't want to. And then the license is down here, and that's the one that gives you the automatic permission to edit. All right, instructor resources. We heard loud and clear that you do need some basic ancillaries to go with the book. So we do offer them. I will emphasize the word basic, but they are available for you, and they include things like PowerPoint slides, sometimes even a test bank, solution manuals, things like that are available. And you can see they're different for each book depending on it. One thing you'll note is that these are locks. And that means that you as a faculty member need to create a faculty account to get access to those for obvious reasons. If you are not a known faculty member in our system already, that can take up to 3 business days. And the reason is we manually check you to make sure that you're a faculty member. And when we were really small, I used to be that person, and let me tell you that like students are sneaky. So they try to get a hold of this. So we do manually check that, but that's available. We also have some basic student resources such as a Getting Started guide, which explains to them that their book is free, that they don't have to buy anything if they don't want to, things like that, and things like a solution manual. All right, this takes a little bit to explain, but partner resources. One of the things we kept hearing from faculty was some courses, it's just not possible to teach without some sort of homework system. And we just can't, we haven't figured out a way to do that for free, to be honest. But we went back to our faculty advisory board and we said, what do you want us to do about this? And they said a couple things. Number one, we want choice. We don't want to be locked into a particular platform or system. And the quote that kept coming up in these meetings was, I don't like that I'm sometimes forced between a book I don't like and a homework system I don't like because they're from different publishers, right? Number two, they said, is there a way you can negotiate down this cost for us as well? And number three, there are so many good homework systems already out in the market, and it would be great if you partnered with the one I'm already using, so that way I don't have to try to switch homework and book at the same time. So we took all that information, and what we did is we created an open market system where we go out and we interview and assess all these different homework, courseware, clicker technology partners. And if they are at a certain quality level, then we will partner with them. But it's an open market system, which means you can use any of these with the book or none of these. It is entirely your choice, but you have that choice. The other nice thing about this is it breaks the monopoly, which means they have to compete for your business. So while it's not uncommon for math homework, for example, to be $120, these start at 10 and go up to about 45. So not only is a student getting the book for free, but we've been able to negotiate down. And I do want to point out that some of these are publishers. This is Macmillan, and this is Cengage. So even some of the publishers are doing it. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so how will those sync with the LMS though? Like,
These,
grade one?
most of them are pretty commercial grade. Like WebAssign is very comparable to, say, Pearson's My Math Lab. So they have the full LMS integration and all of that. And they are integrated with the book as well. So yeah, most of these have that full integration available with them. So that is a quick tour of the website. And like I said, I really want to emphasize this, that students jump around like crazy. They use the different formats of the book. And so that's something to be aware of when you're looking at that. We already went through that. Okay, so how does this actually help students learn? Well, obviously one of the biggest ones is it does remove a cost barrier for students. And we do find a lot of studies that say that students take fewer courses, they drop courses, they don't register courses because of the cost of textbooks. So I was at a college in Dallas, Texas, and a faculty member was like, oh my gosh, I just heard this from a student. I was walking behind her, she was talking on her cell phone about how she was going to have to drop her art history class because she couldn't afford the textbook. This happens. So this is a great way to look at retention and things like that. In terms of efficacy research, I want to preface these next couple slides with Rice University's official position as a research university is that we believe there needs to be a lot more research done with larger sample sizes and in a lot more empirical controls before we draw conclusions from this. With that said, I get asked all the time, so I'll show you what's available, but no, that's our official position. So there have been some studies that show that students increase the number of credits when utilizing an open educational resource, presumably because they can afford to. We also see much lower withdrawal rates in courses where they utilize OER. In terms of how they perform overall, John Hilton at Brigham Young University has done an analysis of that. He took all the 11 peer-reviewed studies, which is about 49,000 students, and it came back that about 93% of them did as well or better using an OER. And I count as well as a win because if they're not spending $400 on a book and they're performing just as well in the course, it's great. Now, the University of Georgia took this a step further and said, well, that makes sense, but what if we take out those students that we know are most likely to be disadvantaged, walking into the classroom, most likely to have trouble accessing their book early on in the class. So they define that as Pell-eligible students, non-white students, and part-time students. And what this shows is that we see that they actually do significantly have higher grades and lower withdrawal rates for these particular subsets of populations. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I touched this thing again. When utilizing an open educational resource. So, and I can provide these slides, so don't feel like you have to get that down. And it's really tiny. Okay. I really want to emphasize though, there's so many benefits to all of this beyond just the cost savings. Number one, as I mentioned, students are constantly juggling between the different formats and different devices. So a lot of times when we see a publisher cut the cost, they'll say the student only has access to the ebook or the student only has access to the PDF. what we find is that's not good for students. They tend to juggle these different things depending on their device. We see them sharing it in social networks and public forums and in blended learning environments. So let me give you an example of this. We were tagged in a Facebook group page the other day of students in a psychology class. Didn't know they still use Facebook for that, but they do. And they were arguing a particular psychological concept, and they started copying and pasting pieces of content from our book into the discussion to debate their particular position on that. And in that process, we got tagged. Now let's be clear, if they copied and pasted publisher content into a public forum by that, that's illegal. That is a copyright violation. But they were using an OER so they could do that. Not only having the instant access, but having permanent access to the content for the rest of their lives. And then being able to use the content in their work. I love meeting with students and they'll show me study guides they've created, or how they've created videos from the content, or they've uploaded the content to Quizlet or to a flashcard app to help them study. All of that is permissible. So one of the big questions that I get is, why do students need that permanent access to the content? Why do I feel so passionately about that? For multiple reasons. Number one, if a student's taking a multi-semester course, that can mean they either have to rebuy the content or buy longer access to that. Thinking like university physics or calculus, where it's a 3-semester course, so they're continually having to buy or extend their access. Having it be a reference for more advanced courses. So we received a major adoption of our statistics book from a university, and we happened to notice that the professor was in psychology. And so we thought, oh, she must have just clicked the wrong button or something. So we reached out to her and I went, didn't you mean you're using the psychology book? And she said, no. I teach all the research methods and advanced research methods courses, and I found that students hadn't touched statistics for a very long time. They needed a brush up. Either their access code ran out, they sold their book back or whatever, but they didn't have access to that content. And so I have them download your free book to use it in that way. You think of the GMAT, GRE, MCAT, LSAT. I don't know about all of you, but I paid Kaplan a lot of money to learn the circumference of a circle for the GRE, so that's a big one. And then this was really interesting. I asked Rice University's funder and library to help me with this one. I said, how many of us actually end up in the career that we went to school for? And of course, that's a really hard study. It's longitudinal, all that fun stuff, but they did find one. And from that one study, it looks like 27% of us actually end up in the career related to what we went to our college major. So yes, that physics major may need that sociology book at some point in their lives. We just don't know. And then of course we are in this really interesting age of really bad content out there and really poor information. And so what is it worth to us as educators and a society to have a high quality vetted American government book accessible to the population? What's the value of having a world history book or a US history book available to the population that we know has been vetted? On the faculty side, this is the real question that we ask at Rice University, is who is actually in control of our courses? So I was telling a story earlier that I went to a college in California and a physics department chair walked in with an entire stack of papers into the meeting with me. She wanted to meet with me and she brought this stack of papers and I was like, oh no. I was like, are these all the changes she wants? Like, I'm scared to ask, right? And so I finally worked up the courage to ask and I was like, what is that stack of papers? And she's like, oh, this is all the copyright violation notices and takedown notices I have gotten from publishers over the years because I tried to create YouTube videos for my students, told I couldn't. I modified the PowerPoint slides, I got another letter. She's like, this is why I switched to OER. I'm so tired of getting these. Why are they telling me how to teach my class? And I'm like, well, that's a good point. So we really think this increases your academic freedom. Number one, because you can move forward on day one of your learning objectives. You don't have to worry about access codes and all that fun stuff. You do have the choice to use technology with your course or you don't. We don't care. It is entirely up to you. We're not going to force you into that. We allow you to edit, adapt, modify the content as you see fit. So if you think of all those times in your courses that you say, I know the book says this, but this is really what's going on. You could just modify. You could create a copy of our book and modify it to meet your class. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Having content not having to move to a new edition. I didn't realize what a big deal that is, but it's a huge deal. Faculty are still using old editions of our books, and they have the right to do that. They can redistribute it, they can do whatever they want with that. No takedown notices, and minimizing faculty course prep quite a bit, because the ancillaries, other than the test bank and solution manuals, are also open license. So you can use those with any book you want. It doesn't have to be ours. So OER use is growing rapidly. As I mentioned earlier, when we started this, we started as a repository and no one was using the content. We had to try to figure out why. Well, now we're up to, and these statistics are old, for those 38 books we have 2.2 million students a year using them. And we're not getting to those numbers from MOOCs or anything else. These are faculty going to our website and saying, I teach economics and I have 100 students and I'm at Cleveland State. That's how we're getting to these numbers. So we've seen this really grow rapidly. And in fact, we're up to about 6,400 institutions utilizing the OpenStax content, and you can see it really runs the gamut of Ivy Leagues, community colleges, four-year privates, specialty schools. I got to watch a presentation by West Point on how they're using our content in their courses, which was just fascinating because they've modified it quite a bit. All right, let's narrow that down to Ohio. Lots of use here in Ohio. It's about 10,000 students a year. We'd like to see it higher, but it's at that level. So you'll see a wide variety of different schools here. I just picked a bunch. This isn't the full list, but those are the ones utilizing it as well. And then in 2017, we found out we were in 16% of introductory courses in the United States. Why is this so important? Well, if you look at the market share of these courses with each of the publishers, they were all at about 20% originally, and now they're all at about 16 to 17%. So what this is telling you is we're competing head to head with them with free books. And in fact, we know some of our books are the market leader now. And 60% of colleges and universities are using us. All right, I wanted to talk about this academic freedom aspect a little bit more because I think this is truly the piece that's most important to us. So this is our general chemistry book, and fun story about that one, that's actually Cengage's old textbook. It's a Robinson and Hawes original book. We were able to purchase the rights for it and peer review it again and publish it under an open license. So that's truly comparable because we bought it from a publisher. University of Connecticut came to us and said that this is a great book, but we teach some of our courses atoms first. So we need to reorder this content to work for our students. And of course we said, you don't even need our permission. Do it, it's fabulous. And they said, well, but other schools do this too. And we don't think the other schools across the country will adopt unless they also see that the reordering has been peer reviewed. Can you do that for us? And we said, well, we don't have the grant money for that right now, but we'll go out and try to get some. A couple weeks later, we got a call back from UConn, and they said, congratulations, the Undergraduate Student Government Association of UConn is giving you and us a grant to have a faculty member reorder the content, have a formal peer review process, and donate it back to you. So now we have general chemistry and atoms first available. This is, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but this is our textbook. If you just go to OpenStax on YouTube, you'll find a lot of these. This is a physics professor, and it's a flipped classroom environment, walking their students through the content, right? So this is our actual textbook on the screen on a public video. So let's be very clear. If you did this with a publisher text, that would be a copyright violation, and you will get one of those takedown notices. But because they're using an open educational resource, they have every right to do this. There's no restrictions on that. This is one I hadn't thought of because I know, especially for us, we're very curious about or very sensitive to our adjunct faculty and making sure that they have what they need. And so I was talking to another physics department chair about this, and she was in a meeting with her adjunct faculty, and they were talking about the fact that they were teaching at 4 or 5 different colleges and universities to put together a living, right? We know this is happening a lot right now in higher ed. And she was listening to them talk, and what she figured out was that they were doing the same course prep every week multiple times, because at those 4 different schools, each one was using a different publisher textbook. And so they had 4 sets of PowerPoint slides. They had 4 sets of everything because you couldn't take the PowerPoint slides from one and use it at a different school because you'd be violating the licensing agreement. Tremendous amount of work. And so she brought them all in a room, fed them lunch, and said, here is a set of openly licensed PowerPoint slides. Here is an openly licensed physics book. Here are the test banks that I've gotten permission for you to use. Create a master set of course prep around these openly licensed materials, and you have permission to use them wherever. So instead of doing 4 course preps a week, they were down to 1. And they just did it based on that content. Because let's be real, there's not a lot of difference in college physics textbooks 101. There just isn't. Faculty started reaching out to us a little while ago and said, you know, it's great that you offer some basic ancillaries, but I've taken this a step further. I've created key terms guides. I've created videos. I've created iBooks. I've created worksheets. I've seen so many different things. And faculty said, how do we donate those back to you? We're like, good question. How do you do that? And so what we did, because we don't have the money to peer review all of these, is we created a hub on OER Commons for each of our textbooks, and faculty can go there and upload and share any additional teaching resources they've created around the books with one another. And so this is heavily used as well. But then the faculty were like, that's cool, thanks for creating that online place, but it still doesn't make sense for a faculty member in Ohio, a faculty member in Florida, and a faculty member in Utah to all be creating key terms guides. We're just reinventing the wheel all over the country. Can we figure out a way to work together in person? And so we got some grant funding, and we brought about 100 faculty to Rice University, and we had this event called Creator Fest, where instead of a traditional conference, we had all of the biology faculty members go in one room, all the sociology faculty members, and they decided what was something they all needed for their course, and they worked together to create that. So, and then they put that up on the hub so other faculty could do that too. So now it's a full-blown conference. It's in its 2nd year. A lot of faculty come to this, but the format stays the same. They come and they work together with fellow colleagues in their subject area on creating additional resources. Oh, I wish this was a real textbook, a real bookstore, but it's photoshopped. Anyway, so this is one of the fun stories, and it's a public story, so I can tell it, is Texas A&M University, pretty close to Rice, was using Campbell Biology as their main textbook. They have for years. I think it's in its like 17th edition or something. Well, something happened. Don't know who's to blame, don't want to know. Bookstore couldn't get any versions of the book into the bookstore. And so the publisher did the right thing, and because the students were starting class, didn't have access to the book, the publisher did the right thing, and they did an emergency shipment of books to the bookstore. Unfortunately, something got mixed up, and that emergency shipment went to the University of Arizona, not to Texas A&M. So now the students were in their 3rd and going on their 4th week of their Bio for Majors course, and they still did not have access to the content. Tests coming up, everything else. And at that point, when the biology faculty was like, wasn't there something about a free online version that students could just access immediately that was comparable? And the library's like, yes, there was. And I'm happy to say now all biology courses at Texas A&M for Bio 1 and 2 are taught with the OpenStax open source book. So they completely switched over. That was a lot of talking. Okay, questions, comments, France?
So I teach business communication, and
Yeah.
that wasn't one of the options. Like, would I be able to take material from other textbooks, or? How
Yeah,
would I go about
absolutely.
doing that?
I do know that the Open Textbook Library is another site. Always fun to type when I'm talking. They're on the University of Minnesota. Now they list any known open source textbooks available. These, unless you see the OpenStax name, are not going to be peer reviewed, probably. So that's something to know. And they may not be, not formally, and they may not have any teaching ancillaries. So that's something to know. But one of the things I really like about this website is that they have faculty kind of Amazon style reviews of the books, so that you can actually read other faculty who have written reviews of this, what they think of the content. So it's not that formal peer review, but it'll still give you a good idea of what they think of the content. So that's available too. Thanks for coming. And you all are a member of the Open Textbook Library and Open Textbook Network, so you wouldn't have to be to access this anyway, but that's available. So they do have at least one business communication book for you. Yeah.
And that's where, so if anybody is interested and you're not seeing in OpenStax or just in your general searching what you're looking for, like Nicole said, you can reach out to one of us or you can reach out to your librarian. And we love searching for things.
Oh,
so
librarians are fabulous.
we're happy to kind of see what's available and show you what we found.
Yeah. Other stuff? I know it's right after lunch. There's coffee. Yes.
This is just out of curiosity. At your university, is there some, like what proportion of the students who take psychology, whatever it is, 101, do they all use that open access textbook? Is it somehow linked into the like courses, like if somebody goes to sign up for a class, does it indicate if you take this class, you have an open access?
Yeah, and it depends on which university, right? So Rice tends to be at our own university. They're obviously not forced into this either, right? So it tends to be faculty member by faculty member. We do have, so it all depends, you know how it is. Some schools, every faculty member chooses for themselves, and some schools it's a departmental adoption. So we have a mix of both all over the country. In terms of how students find out, one of the things that's being done, always scary to Google Live, is a class schedule search. So Maricopa was the first one to do this, and what they have done, they keep moving it around on me, is you can actually filter by no cost or low cost textbooks when the students are searching for sections to take. So that's an option as well. One of the things I'm starting to push is it would be really interesting to start looking at this from, especially the student services side, when we know that there are students who are going in for textbook vouchers or things like that, to be able to say, you know what classes do you need? And let's see if any of the faculty teaching those courses utilize an OER, because in that case, we won't have to give you a voucher, right? So there's things like that. One project I tried and was not successful was I tried to get Rate My Professor to put it on there. I will go back to them if anybody has any connection. Like, they have a chili pepper, for goodness sakes, why not a $, right? I want it. Anyway, but yeah, so that's another way that students are starting to find out about it as well. So, yeah.
Have you looked at that, if there's like a link between like instructor evaluations and the cost of education resources?
Yeah, we have seen that a little bit, not done at like an empirical level, but we have seen a lot of institutions are doing what your professor did with IRB, where they're going in.
Mm-hmm.
They do see higher survey evaluations, and the biggest feedback that I see is, I feel like my professor understands me and they care about me because of this. You know, in terms of enrollment in those courses, it really depends on how much the word has gotten out among the students that they know about this, or they just know internally from themselves, if that's a thing. But even then, it still has to meet their schedule, right? So that's one thing. But we do hear overwhelmingly, I do have stories of professors who have told their students, and their students have stood up and started clapping for them. So but the biggest feedback that I see on surveys is, I feel like my professor understood me because they got that this was an issue for me, you know, so they feel cared about, you know, that's interesting.
Do you take like requests then for like what type of subjects you like? I mean, like what type
Oh yeah, and we get them, believe me. We have a list of about 40 textbooks that we would like to publish right now that we are actively going out and seeking grant funding for. But we do take requests for that, absolutely. And we have a list of all the requests we've gotten in. And we take that to the grant funders and say, like, this number of faculty have requested organic chemistry is the top request I get all the time. And so we try to get our grant funders to consider that. So, yeah, absolutely. So if you have them come up later, and I'll write them all down. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. I'm a librarian. I have had students come up to the desk and say, I just want a book about algebra. Or I just want a book, they want essentially some basic text. And this is wonderful because of the fact that it's updated. I mean, I could try to convince somebody, if you go, algebra hasn't changed that much, but it would be wonderful to have this, as a resource. I wonder if you're in library catalogs.
Yeah, we have them in our
Oh, do we?
library.
Oh,
we
good.
have all of them.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, it's funny because like I even went out to dinner with a friend and they're like, so what are you doing these days? I hadn't caught it. It was like a high school friend and I was explaining it. And a bunch of the servers came over to the table and they're like, hi. Not to interrupt you, but did you say something about free college textbooks? It was really kind of funny, so it's something, and we tell students, we do see students, believe it or not, actively use them as study aids. I actually had someone at my gym stop me and say, hey, I heard you do this. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I want to show you my iPad. And he brought up his iPad. And he had 5 or 6 different OER textbooks that had been downloaded on his iPad on a particular subject. And a non-traditional student, but I said, how are you using those? And he was a computer engineering or something I will never understand. And he's like, well, sometimes I struggle to understand it in my regular text. So what I'll do is I'll search that subject in all of the different OER until I find an explanation that makes sense to me. I was like, wow, that is a dedicated student, So we do see that too.
Those are good commercials. I think that one about how you're eating dinner and they say, textbook.
Oh my gosh, it was so awkward. So.
Well, before you all head out, if you didn't get a chance, there's like a sign-up sheet up here, and we would love to know who all was interested and who came. But let's thank Nicole